How you all doing? It's great to be talking to you today on December 8th, 2020. Now, this is a special day, a somber day, a sad day because, 40 years ago today, December 8th, 1980, that's a day that will live in infamy because of a legendary icon, rock icon musician, John Lennon, that we all knew and loved from the Beatles, and he was also a successful solo artist, of course, in his own right. Um, was gunned down 40 years ago today, if you can believe it, in New York City, and we're not gonna bother talking about the lowlife that committed the bloody deed. I will just say this: um, no need to mention the loser's name because he was nuts. He's still nuts, and he will be nutty as a fruitcake till the day he dies. But I will say this: I remember years ago seeing an interview Barbara Walters did with this nut job, and all he had to say was, "Hey," when she asked like, "Why did he do it?" and his response was basically something to the effect that because before he killed John Lennon, he was the biggest nobody in the world. But once he killed John Lennon, he became the biggest somebody. Yeah, in your mind, bozo. But December 8th, 1980 is a day that will live in infamy. It is a very tragic day. I mean, so today, as you sit here and remember John Lennon, try to remember, how old you were, or what you were doing 40 years ago. Just put on your favorite Beatle tune or favorite John Lennon song. I mean, John Lennon. I mean, what an iconic musician. I mean, just fabulous songwriter. I mean, you could put on anything from Let It Be, I Want to Hold Your Hand, to Imagine. I mean, I remember a few years ago. I mean, it's nowhere close to seeing the real Beatles maybe, but I remember seeing a great tribute to the Beatles called the Fab Four, LA-based Beatles tribute band, and it made me wish that I'd been around, when the Beatles were, and I could have seen them in concert. But man, um, what iconic musician John Lennon was, and to be gunned down, in his early 40s, you know, he would have been 80 something if he'd still been alive, and he was just having a comeback. He just released a solo album, and it was doing pretty good. And he was on the second phase of his career, and just to think of the success that was coming his way again, and that what could have been, and just think of all the great music that he could have been making for the last 40 years, but his life was cut short. And also, as we sit here and we remember John Lennon, go and put on your favorite Beatles album, favorite John Lennon album, and it's also a day to remember Dimebag Darrell, another iconic rock guitar player from the bands Damage Plan and Pantera. He was gunned down. He was murdered 16 years ago, December 8th, 2004. Murdered on stage, and many people think that the killer picked that date to do the murder, maybe to get in the news, because it was also the same day that John Lennon was murdered. These killers, they worship other killers, and they get these crazy ideas. And I tell you, um, it's nothing to brag about that you killed John Lennon or Dimebag Darrell. I mean, in the case of Dimebag Darrell, I mean, murdered on stage in front of his older brother and his other bandmates and so many fans. I mean, the people that were there that night, and witnessed that. There's really been no events like that since, or before, or even after, and just thought of it as very tragic. I mean, Dimebag Darrell, iconic guitar player, very much like John Lennon was to his generation. Um, Dimebag Darrell died at the very young age of 38. So December 8th today, 16 years later in Dimebag Darrell's case, and 40 years after the murder of John Lennon. Let's remember these two icons, and just remember how great they were, and the wonderful music they left behind. And let's never forget these two legends, as we get to go on with our lives, and just stop and think. In both Daryl's case and John Lennon, I mean, especially John Lennon, let's think of all the music that man could have made in the last 40 years if he was still here. If he was still here, he'd be like about 85 years old. And Daryl, man, his life was just cut tragically short too. So let's remember these two iconic